into the camera and tell my lonely editor stuck in Los Angeles that's in a room all by herself, hello, her name is Sally.
Hello, Sally!
Sally Joanne Menke was an American film editor who was best known for a long-time collaboration with director Quentin Tarantino, who edited all of his films up until her death in 2010.
Say hi, Sally. Hi, Sally.
It was this quote by Tarantino that made me start to wonder.
When I was doing my first movie, the only thing I knew is I wanted a female editor, because I just felt a female editor would be more nurturing to the movie and to me. I wouldn't try to be winning their way just to win their way, all right? They wouldn't be trying to shove their agenda or win their battles with me. They would be nurturing me through this process.
What does that actually mean? Did Menke's gender have something to do with her editing style? The world of editing has been one of the few areas of filmmaking where women were more commonly hired for compared to other filmmaking roles, even in the silent era. Although, perhaps that's also due to the idea that editing, or back then known as cutting, was seen as a similar practice to sewing. But Tarantino's quote kept sticking out to me. Nurturing? I couldn't help but look over my past work and begin to consider if my gender and experiences as a woman specifically influenced my editing style. As an editor, yes, you do manipulate time of the action in a film, controlling the order, frequency, and the duration of shots and scenes, which in turn influences and impacts the narrative structure and passing of time for the viewer. But there is something more. By blending audiovisual pieces together, you impact the viewer and create an emotional connection. The editing suite can almost be seen as an empathy laboratory. Each gesture, cue, and line delivery can be interpreted differently by an editor. And in a recent study by researchers at the University of Cambridge, studies found that women are much better at empathizing than men, regardless of cultural influences.
To be empathetic is to logically understand the emotions and emotional experiences of others. It is to identify with what the person is thinking or feeling, and to accurately try to understand that person's perspective.
This helped me make more sense of what Tarantino was saying, that with a female editor, he was supported more throughout the process. Menke even supported his claims, saying,
I think editors play a big role with directors in giving them support, making them feel like they can look at something that may have trouble or problems and be comfortable enough so that they can approach those problems.
However, was Tarantino right? When looking at all of the great female editors and their work, was there a gender-specific style and traits? And if so, how is that different to their male counterparts? With the takeover of digital filmmaking and online editing softwares, films are much more accessible to make, considering the increase of independent films being made within the last 10 years. So I focused my research on contemporary independent cinema as a means to get a relevant and topical answer that is reflective of the current landscape of cinema today. I interviewed 4 editors who I believe best represent the world of editing in contemporary independent cinema: Nathan Nugent, Rachel Dorrance, Keith Fraze, and Amanda James. I focused my questions on one particular film from their filmography: Nugent's work on Room, a 2015 film directed by Lenny Abrahamson about a woman, Mia, who's been held captive for 7 years and her son Jack was born in captivity. Dorrance's work on Shag Bands, a 2020 short film directed by Luna Khan Moon, about a gang of South London schoolgirls who face strange sexual awakenings which culminate in a visceral fate. Fraser's work on Past Lives, a 2023 film directed by Celine Song about 2 childhood best friends who contemplate the nature of their relationship despite living across the world from one another. And James's work on The Long Goodbye, a 2020 short film directed by Neil Carrier about a British South Asian family who are organising a wedding, whilst a far-right march that plays out on the telly eventually arrives on their front door. After interviewing them all about their past work and how they would describe their style and traits as an editor, I finally asked them the big question: does your gender impact your style of work? I got a range of responses.
Well, I would always say it's personal as opposed to gendered, because there's been quite a lot of things that I've worked on that I've been more attached to the female character than... No, gender doesn't come into it. It's actually based on your own experience.
Well, some of the best editors in the world are women, and I don't think that's a coincidence. It's hard to say because I've worked with a lot of amazing male editors who have that into the same kinds of intuition as a woman, but I think women are so good at picking up on nuance in somebody's face, or they're just very intuitive to emotion, I think. Maybe more so than a man, but again, I've met men who are just as good at it. I don't know, it's like women's intuition. Like, I think that lends itself well to the edit.
Because I would say, I mean, the editors that I admire the most are all women. The best editor who's ever lived is Thelma Schoonmaker. I think she's incredible. When I describe her editing, it has a very, like, for lack of a better word, it has a very aggressive, almost masculine type of style to it, right? Like, it's very, like, in your face, very brash, and I love it to death. I can't watch a movie and immediately guess what the gender of the editor is. Sometimes I can be aware that my gender makes it harder for me to step into the shoes of like a protagonist who is either female or or non-binary. That doesn't come from the same place that I came from.
Yeah, it is something that I've sort of thought about a lot over the years, and I do feel like it kind of sets us apart, female editors apart from our male counterparts, because I just, we sort of function in the world on a much more kind of sensitive, emotional level. But that's not to say that what I do is gentle or feminine as such. In fact, I kind of think it's quite the opposite. I kind of go for quite aggressive style a lot of the time.
Somehow, this answers everything, and yet nothing at all. I pondered for days, rewatching their past works and trying to imagine if I didn't know, did a man or a woman edit this? But then I realised. As I recalled back to watching Room for the first time, despite the incredibly moving performances and the heavy subject matter, it was one very short scene in particular that truly got to me. Close your eyes and just listen to what I'm about to describe. As Mia and Jack are finally out of captivity, they begin to adjust to a regular life. They get to try and explore new things together as mother and son that they never would have done if they were still being held captive. In one montage scene, Jack and Mia are in a diner, eating burgers and laughing together. That's it. And then it cuts away to the next couple of shots in the montage sequence. Those short couple of shots, however, moved me in such a way that I began to heavily sob. It made me reminisce back to times with me and my mum, all those times we spent together when I was a kid, just like Jack, trying new things together. Those shots perfectly encapsulated a memory, a moment, that just like myself, Jack will think back to when he's my age. It truly made me and my mum's relationship feel seen, and if it was edited any differently, if it was an entire scene rather than just a few shots in a montage sequence, it wouldn't have had the same effect like it did in the film. It truly transported me back in time. You can open your eyes again now. I think that made me realise there isn't a gendered way of editing. If I hadn't have been researching Nugent's work for this assignment, I never would have known that he was a man who was brought up in Ireland in a nuclear family household, which is a very different setting and family dynamic that I was brought up in. I think that is the language of editing, empathy, something that Nugent and the rest of the editors I had the pleasure of interviewing also touched upon. Yes, women are naturally more empathetic, and it shows through our prevalence in the editing industry, as we are able to, like Tarantino said about Menke, nurture our collaborators into creating incredible narratives and stories, and it's no surprise that there are some fantastic female editor-director collaborators throughout the history of film, which even includes Rachel Dorrance and Luna Carmoon, and Amanda James and Anil Karia. Ultimately, I believe there is no gendered language to editing, and even perhaps it's not a language at all, but rather a movement.
In a sense, it's like dance. You can explain the rudiments of dance, but to really learn how to dance, you have to dance.